Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long years. I've studied million man's soul and faith. Pleased to meet you. I hope you've guessed my name. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my game. Indeed. Who can say better than that? I'm sorry, I was a bit distracted. I was just reading a book. But chat amongst yourselves for a while. Hi everybody, I'm Russ Kane. What's left of him? Jesus, it's bad today. Got to tell you, gang, bad. And got a special guest. Can't wait. But before that, you know him. You've grown to love him. He's the king of New Malden. And frankly, does life get any more exciting than that? Bloody well does, actually. It's Neil Long.
King of New Malden at your service. Good afternoon. Welcome to Men's Radio. What a guest you have today, Russ Kane.
Notice that we've been, by the way, I've got to do this because if I put it down and the blood flows through it, it's just horrible. So I'm not showing off. It's just pain in the ass, but pain in the hand, actually. So, did you ever think that we would put New Malden so much on the map of excitement? It's like Las Vegas now.
I didn't think it was possible because if you Google New Malden, it says boring town near Kingston where nothing ever happened.
Flocking into New Malden just because they know it's
absolutely
must be packed.
And we have the highest Korean population in Europe. True story.
Do you? Any dogs left?
Oh, please.
Can't believe I just said that.
I can't believe you just said that.
I don't care.
Apologize, listeners.
I don't care. Here we go. Lovely Demisa. We have lovely chats every day now. Good morning.
Morning, lovely Leslie.
She is great, isn't she? Liz Saul, hello everybody. She's your mate. Let's go up to Fife in Scotland. Sue Sleet, and rivaling. Take two, love. Still rolling. Okay, thank you. Hello, Stephen. Can you hear me? It's Clem Fandango. Rivaling New Malden. It is. Well, I've bloody lost it now. Oh, anyway, East Croydon. Here we go. This is what I wanted. Good afternoon for everybody for lovely sunny East Croydon. Lovely and East Croydon are words you'll never see in one sentence.
Big up yourself in East Croydon, Paul.
Yeah. East Croydon, this is live from Manhattan. Seriously, she's in New York. It's like New York now. Yeah. New Malden is like New York. Who'd have thought?
Well,
right, that's enough for that. Time for a special guest. Now, those of you who were...
I think a local man once got a strawberry pip stuck in his front denture in New Malden. It made headline news. You like that one then?
I do. It probably would make headline news. Now, those of you who were kind enough to, I can't believe 3 years it came out, by my novel, The Gatekeeper, will know that the central protagonist is a very tough American lawyer called Lesley-Ann Jones. Jones remains a secret, but Lesley-Ann was my little tribute to one of my oldest friends. She's not American. She's not a lawyer. But she is a ballbuster in a lovely way. She is, of course, author and broadcaster. It's Lesley-Ann Jones.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, lad.
Is it morning or afternoon? I'm not sure.
Who the hell knows? Who cares? It depends where you're watching. If for Elizabeth Green in Manhattan, it's early morning,
There you go.
Yeah.
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much.
And for Neil in New Malden, it's 1957.
It is. We're in a bit of a time warp here, Leslie, but lovely to meet you.
You too. You too.
Yeah.
Yes, good old-fashioned values here in New Malden. I'll have you now.
Yeah, black and white TV and 2 channels. And it goes off at 10 o'clock with a white dot. So, Ladge, how are you?
Good, thanks. Better than you by the looks of things.
Oh, just screwed up. I'm really
Is it happening? Are the bones fusing? Is that the expression?
It's extremely slow. I went yesterday back to St. Thomas's, and I can't say enough great things about the NHS at St. Thomas's. The most charming, polite, efficient, incredible people, really, and had physio. I don't think my language was suitable for public consumption because, man, he hit a couple of spots and he had to peel me off the ceiling. That was Rodrigo, lovely fellow. But
do you know what? They've heard it all before.
Oh, I know they have. It blew well hurts. It's going to take weeks,
I'm sorry,
if not months. But anyway, there we go. Stupid damn accident. But anyway, that's another story. That's not why we're here. We are here because, and there's other stuff I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about the whole Adam Lambert thing later. But you know I'm a huge fan of your writing. I've always. This is nothing new, Neil. I've been a fan of Ladge's writing for like forever. So this is the new I can't flash it up because I'm not the BBC, but they wouldn't be able to do
The
it either.
Stone Age, 60 years of the Rolling Stones.
By
Lesley-Ann Jones.
it's almost
Wow.
like I've planned this. So I can't believe it's 60 years of the Stones. It's extraordinary.
It is. And their Goat's Head Soup album, which was re-released in 2020, made them a record that they are the only band to have had a #1 album in each of 6 decades.
No.
Which is
I don't really-
extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're still going. They're still out there. And the gossip, the word on the street in the music industry is this will be the last time. You know, they will retire after
Write
this
that
tour.
down. Write that down because that is a good title.
Might be a good title for a song, yeah.
I see,
But
I see
Do you
what
think
did
they'll?
there. I
Hey,
see what you
Reg,
did,
do you
Leslie.
think they'll fade away?
no. Mick
We can
says
keep this. We
Is
can
it
keep this
released
going
on
for an
a
hour.
Ruby
by the way.
Tuesday?
well, yeah, quite. But no, Mick says they've been saying that since 1964. You know, but they're still going. And Keith Richards has made very clear that the Stones will end when he drops down dead live on the stage, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. Keith,
That's very rock
do you
and
know
roll.
what? I realised that my life was over when I always watch American channels. I hardly watch any British TV apart from sort of Father Brown and Midsummer Murders. And Keith is with his band, the Expensive Winos, and he's given up smoking. He's stopped smoking. Keith Richards has stopped smoking.
He's an intelligent individual, and whenever a doctor or a surgeon tells him, if you don't quit this particular thing, you will die. He doesn't want to die. He's got a really nice life. He loves his wife. He loves his daughters. He's got an amazing lifestyle, house upstate New York, all the rest. He doesn't want to check out yet. So when it comes to crunch, and when one of these professional experts, I suppose that's the same thing, isn't it? When somebody tells him, you will stop or you will die, he listens and he stops. The stupid people are the ones who don't.
I have to read this because it's disgustingly filthy. And it's nothing to do with the book. It says, have to go now. My friend Paul here is filling my crack.
Pause.
The conservatory wall. Leslie,
Keep it clean. For goodness
smutty
sake.
cow. And interestingly enough, speaking of the Stones, this is coming in from Manhattan. Elizabeth Green, my brother got Ronnie Wood to stop smoking a few years ago. Well,
bravo.
I didn't know that. I thought Ronnie still smoked. The reason I wanted you on the show, apart from I wanted you on the show, obviously, because I love having you as a guest, and we have been pals.
Thank you. You're so generous.
Don't be daft. I firmly believe, and Neil does too, that music is really important to our mental health. I think it's an absolute key component. Music and the arts. So if people are saying, but wait a minute, you're a radio station that centers on mental health and well-being. Yeah. Because in my view, music and the arts is absolutely crucial to how we feel. I really do believe that.
Well, of course, it's true. Most of us are more aware of mental health and the importance of maintaining mental health today, more aware than we've ever been to date. Those of us who've been listening to music since before we popped out of the womb, probably, have long known the secret of music as an antidote to misery. That we can change our mood with it, that we can step up the pace with it. We can do all kinds of things to music. And most days we're doing that stuff without really realizing it. We get on the car, we switch on the radio, or we crack onto our playlist or whatever it is. And we will have playlists that are designed to help us work, to help us play, to help us relax, to do all of those things. And we can be in charge of our mental health at the touch of a button, simply by harnessing the power of music. And those who don't know this need to get in tune and to understand, because it's such a great free way of helping yourself.
Totally.
Did you know, Leslie? I love throwing this one out there. That there's science behind this now. They've measured DJs that do the big dance floors, and the crowd are in ecstasy doing all this. And it's 128 BPM is the magic beats per minute. For people to get all 6 bliss chemicals at once in their brain, so all your serotonins and your dopamines and your anandamides, and it's the only state they know where you actually get all 6 or 7 at once. 128 BPM.
Yeah, Makes sense. And then you'll get
You
these
look at an
exercise
average Calvin
classes.
Harris song, they're mainly
Yeah.
like, or a big DJ or a big name in the dance industry. They're generally 9 times out of 10, 128 BPM.
But did you know, and this is not putting a dampener on what you're saying, because I agree with what you're saying, but the music industry being vile, as we all know, and basically a sewer to swim through, produces nice music and great music, but the industry itself is disgusting. When everybody was off their faces on drugs, they'd go and think, how's he dancing for 8 hours? Because they're off their faces on drugs. The BPM, the beats per minute of the tune, was aligned with the way that the drugs was making their brain work. This was absolutely how it worked. And they found the sweet spot, if such a thing is possible. I don't do drugs, it's just not me. If you want to, it's up to you. It's not a moral thing. It's just I don't do it. Never have. But they tuned it. So the music was exactly where the drug. That's why everyone was dancing for like 6 hours straight. It's
interesting, isn't it? Very
and I
interesting.
bet it was close to 128.
Yeah, absolutely right.
It's very
Absolutely
interesting that the same pace of music is used in exercise classes. So you've got all these women doing Zumba and hot yoga, or the cycling classes that they do, spin, I think they call it. All of that stuff is carried out at the same pace as well.
It is. And trust me, if you're getting all 7 bliss chemicals at once, you don't need drugs. You really don't.
Yeah. What's your excuse, Neil?
What's that?
Luke Newman says, I love how music can symbolize, oh, this is so true, different periods in your life. It's like opening a memory book as soon as you hear that track. You can hear one track that'll take you back to an exact moment.
Hugely.
Oh, Luke, couldn't agree with you more, fella. So let's get back to your book. Why did you want to? I mean, all right, we've always loved the Stones for a wild variety of reasons. Why did you want to write this particular book?
I have to be honest, it wasn't my idea. It was my editor's idea. The publishing house Bonnier, who I wrote a biography of John Lennon for last year, and they wanted a follow-up. And what publishers do, they're very savvy. They look at anniversaries. What big anniversaries coming up that we can capitalize on. And of course, it turned out that this year was going to be the 60th anniversary of the Rolling Stones. So my editor phoned me, would you fancy it? I said, it's a big subject. Second consideration, the subjects are alive. I haven't hitherto, we then realized, written a whole book about a band or an artist who was still living. And that's a much different prospect from writing a book about someone who's deceased. You can't libel the dead, not that one ever sets out to libel anybody. But the fact is, you've got to be a whole lot more careful when they're all still alive, apart from the key founder member, Brian Jones, who's the only Stone, incidentally, who I never met. But I also had, I mean, what the secret factor for me, I always have to have a direct connection to the artist I'm writing about, or the band. And for me, there was what we call the Bill Wyman episode, when in the Dark Ages, I happened by chance to become embroiled in his affair with Mandy Smith, who, as we all know, was a child when they began sleeping together. It still amazes me that this all went over everybody's heads and that nobody did anything about it. No. And people often ask me, I've been castigated over the years, you were older than her, you were old enough to know better, why didn't you tell someone? And the answer to that has to be that we simply didn't realize quite how young she was. Not until
I'm going to jump in here, and I didn't think you probably didn't think I was going to say this, but I will. Lesley-Ann and I were like inseparable buds back in the day, and we were both in. I'm not going to tell you how, it's irrelevant, and we both became friends with Bill Wyman and would hang with Bill
at the same time
a lot. We were both pals. We both brought into that circle. And I don't talk about this publicly, but it is LAJ.
I'm quite surprised you brought this up, because I've always protected your involvement,
I know, but I don't want people to think you're just saying that. It's very important. I've always tried to be extremely honest in my broadcasting, but especially with men's radio. I don't want people thinking, oh, she's just saying that.
Oh, thank you.
One day it was Mandy's birthday. and Leslie and I are sitting next to each other at dinner somewhere in Chelsea. I don't know where it was, and it was just.
It was at Thierry's.
Thierry's with
down below from Bill's apartment.
What was the girl's name? I can't remember her name.
Lou. Lou was the waitress, and she was going out with Ken Gold, the songwriter.
Oh God!
Who wrote "You to Me Are Everything," one of my favorite songs.
Didn't he do all the stuff?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Stars on 45?
Yeah.
Neil Longy, do you remember those Stars on 45 where they took all those hits and they put them to a certain beat and just made it one long record? Of course I do.
Yeah, they were cheesy as hell, but really good.
Wasn't that him? Because we went to dinner at this house.
Yeah, that might have been Ken Gold, yeah.
We went to this house, Neil, back in the day. People didn't think I actually had a life. It's not like it is now. And this house was a palace. And we said, how the hell did you afford this? He said, well, you know those crap Stars on 45 things. He said, that's me.
Yeah. What a lovely guy he was. And he and Lou were a couple,
He was a sweet guy. He was a sweet guy. Anyway, the point was, back to the story. And I'm saying this because A, we've known each other forever. And B, I do not want you left out on a limb. And people to think, oh, she's making this up. So we're sitting having dinner in, as you said, Thierry's. And there's Bill and Mandy's sister, Nicola. And Mandy's mum and Stephen, Bill's son, and everything. So I say, and Mandy's
there was one candle on the cake, if you remember. Brittany brown cake. Right. There was one candle, so there was no indication of Mandy's age, although it was her birthday.
So I said, oh man,
you said,
because I'd known her for ages by now. I said, so how old are you today? What are you, 20, 21, 22? She went, nah, I'm 15 today. I turned round, I looked at Lesley-Ann, she looked at me, we thought, well, I can't use the language, but we went, oh my God.
Because we suddenly did the math.
We were out of there. We had dinner. Yeah. That was the end of it. Man,
and we were frightened. We were quite young ourselves, and we were frightened, I think, that somebody was going to come after us because we had done something wrong by colluding in this.
We hadn't colluded. I've got to be
no, but we had by stealth. We had by stealth because we were involved in that friendship circle. We knew that here was a man who was nearly 40 years older than the girl he's with. And we didn't know exactly how old she was, but we knew he was older. But when we knew, we scarpered. Because I said to you, when we discussed this, I said to you, and what did we do then? And you said, we ran like hell because we were afraid.
Yeah. Sure. Well, we were like young. What are you going to do? You going to take on the Rolling Stones? Of course not. I mean, I was, I think I'd just started Capitol. I was a copywriter. You were, thrusting around in Fleet Street and everything. What were you going to do?
Yeah. And I wasn't quite in Fleet Street. I was presenting
you were doing
a rock magazine show on Channel 4.
And Steve Blacknell and all that.
Yeah, and you suddenly see your career disappearing down the toilet because you've been involved in something like this.
Yeah, I don't know.
What amazes me.
It was actually slightly worse for me. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot. I didn't think we were going to get there, but as I said, I did not want you leaving on a limb. Because Bill said, look, would you do me a favor, Russ? I went, okay. He said, look, I don't want to go into restaurants with Mandy because of the paparazzi. Would you, escort? So the rumor got out. I was married at the time. And the rumor got out that I'm dating this phenomenal looking blonde model. And obviously I wasn't. Had I known, I would never have been. I'm not saying that in retrospect. I wouldn't have touched it with a freaking barge pole. I wouldn't have.
The interesting point to make here, and I've been pulled up on this quite a lot over the years, is that he couldn't have done anything wrong because otherwise he would have been tried and he would be in prison.
Yeah.
For that to have happened, somebody would have had to make a formal complaint to the police or the Crown Prosecution Service. Yeah. Bill made much in recent years of the fact that when it all erupted again, as it does periodically, that he marched himself off to the CPS or into his local police station and said, do you want to talk to me? And they said in return, no, you're cool, you're fine. And the reason for that is nobody, either Mandy or her parents, ever made a formal complaint. And no investigation can commence unless somebody has done that. But the fact is, he is not off the hook. There isn't a time limit to these things, as we've seen with all these cases with Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris and Bill Cosby in America. There does come a time when this kind of thing catches up with people, however long it takes. And Bill is not off the hook, and I think he knows that. And I think that's the reason why he stood down from the Rolling Stones, because his scandal.
Did you
Yes,
think
his
that, getting back
scandal
to
and
your
his
point?
reputation were tainting the
I
band.
thought when we talked about it, he always said, because I wrote the sleeve notes for the first 3 Rhythm Kings albums, which was Bill's band. I wrote those, and I'd introduced them on stage as well a few times. And he just said he was tired of touring. He just didn't want to do the touring anymore.
You know
That's what he said to me.
What they say and what they do. I mean, think about it. There's an undercurrent there that could have seen him relieved of his liberty for the rest of his life.
Could have.
Because quite honestly, for an adult male to sleep with a girl who is underage, so she cannot consent because she's under the age of consent, that is statutory rape. That is how the law regards it. Think about that for a minute. Nobody's ever paid for that.
I just want to say one thing, and I know you and I have long debates about this, which we're not going to get into now, so I want to get back to the book. But I'm sure the public perception is there's this little girl and she's sitting there meek and mild and there's this great big rock star. You actually have to return the telescope the other way round. Bill was like the quietest person you can imagine. When he was offset, really quiet, very normal, if you like. Mandy was in charge of everything, like the birthday party. She's in charge of everything. And don't forget, and Longy, it gets more complicated because Bill's son, Stephen, who was his best friend, as you know, was dating Mandy's mum.
It's the most bizarre scenario,
it was so entangled.
Yeah.
So we ran and we just kept
We just
got the hell out of Dodge.
I would not be surprised, and I'm not saying I want it to happen, but I would not be surprised to see this resolve in a different way. I just said I'm not saying I want that to happen.
He's recovering from cancer. There's not good cancer, so when I say he got cancer badly, sounds stupid, sounds redundant, but you know what I mean.
Prostate cancer, to be specific.
He had prostate cancer. He looks shocking. I saw some a video recently about an auction he was doing. I was shocked. He had sort of been propelled into being. He looked dreadful. He looked every one of his years.
He's pretty elderly now. What is he? 84.
Yeah, he's probably in his mid 80s. So Longy, let me throw this to you because this is fresh to you. All right. So this is a sort of academic question. What he did was undoubtedly wrong. Yes, he married her and all the rest of it.
That doesn't absolve any guilt. It doesn't. Just to be clear.
I'm with you on that. Okay. Okay. Would you want to see a prosecution of an 84, 85-year-old man for this?
That's really hard question.
No, it is a hard question. That's why I'm throwing it to you, because these are the sort of moral dilemmas that men's radio, we look at and we think, well, what the heck?
It happened to Bill Cosby in America, didn't it?
Yeah.
Would it serve any good? Would it serve any purpose?
What good would it do?
Well, that is what Mandy said when she was questioned about this.
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
See, here's an interesting question. So while you're thinking about the answer, Neil, see, I'm buying you some time. This is from Rosemary, Queen of Horses, Rosemary Jessup. But what about Elvis and Priscilla? Now, Elvis was Priscilla, what was she, 13, 14, 15?
She was 14 when they met. It's the same kind of thing. And her parents gave the blessing for her to marry him. Exactly right. It's the same story. A 14-year-old cannot consent because they are under the age of consent. That is the only consideration.
The thing that I don't get, and I don't know how you feel about this, if you're the Rolling Stones, the biggest band the planet has ever seen, forget the Beatles. I love the Beatles. I'm a huge Beatles nut, but they're not touring. They haven't been together for.
They lasted 7 years as a touring band.
There you go, as opposed to 60 years. Okay. Yeah. But their impact is 7 centuries. But if you're the Rolling Stones, you're richer than God. You can have, and forgive me for being vulgar, but you could have anyone. You go up, hi, I'm the Rolling Stones. Boom, that's it. You don't have to say much more. Your lifestyle is incredible. Your wealth is as rich as Croesus. Why?
Why what?
Why would you choose that?
And that's another don't know.
I don't understand, Ladge. I've never understood that.
What do you mean? Why would you choose an underage girl?
You could go out with any supermodel actress because you're.
And they do. The list of Mick Jagger's conquests, I had to confine it to the book to known female names. people we've heard of,
Yeah.
because the list runs into the high thousands.
Wow.
Seriously. And that's Jagger alone. Charlie Watts, on the other hand, met Shirley in 1964, and that was it. They were together for life. There was never anybody else.
Yeah.
And then you've got Wyman, who you say he was the quiet stone, and he was referred to as that. He called himself that. But he used to say, I've had more girls than the rest of them put together. 3 a night sometimes, as if that was something to be proud of. I suppose there was a time when men thought that was something to be proud of. But it isn't anymore. And it's not enough to say that times have changed and that we think differently now. The law hasn't changed. The law remains the same.
I do agree with that. I agree that times have changed, and I agree the law hasn't changed. But it is true that there was a different social mores back then, and stuff that we would consider really inappropriate now was just it's not right, but it kind of goes on, and that was kind of the attitude back then. I was a bit young to be part of that. We were just coming out of it when I started to understand it. But in my historical understanding, I do believe that's what it was like. I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying it was within the law, but I do think that's the way it was back then.
Absolutely. I think there's 2 major points come out. I didn't know we were going to get into any of this.
In my opinion.
But no. You never have to say that, Neil. You never have to add an addendum. It's
okay.
Fine.
I retract the
You can say what you know. That you say what you want here.
Thank you. Then I retract the last
BBC,
3 words.
And you have to fill in a form. You can do what the hell you want. That's the point. That's why we have such a loyal audience all over the world. Now, 2 things. I think it is very difficult, and I think it is very wrong to look at the 60s, let's say, with the mores of 2022. It's virtually impossible. I have these conversations with my twins who were 24 yesterday.
Happy birthday, twins.
Bless them.
Happy birthday.
And bless them. And they can't get their head around it, and they never could. And I've come to accept that they cannot understand the way that I used to be, Lesley-Ann used to be, the life we led. That they can't get that. They can't understand what it was like then. And there's no point in trying to explain it or trying to convert them. I know that. That's fine. It's set in aspic. It's done. All right. And that's really the main thing. But I think we have to look at the other side of the coin, which is complicity. No one put I'm not saying they were, but if you look at groupies, I'm sorry to be a little bit vulgar, but if no one put a gun to their head and said, you will be a groupie and follow this band around all over America or Europe, that's what they wanted to do. God knows.
Okay, let me step in here.
Of course.
You may say that's what they wanted to do, but in a lot of cases, girls became groupies because there was neglect in their lives. They weren't being parented properly in some cases. There were other mitigating circumstances. They were in search of something to fill a void. That's an almost universal state of mind that drives a girl to go chasing after bands and to become part of their entourage. It was certainly the case in Mandy's life. Her father had a band in the family, and the mother was ill and confined to bed for much of the time. So she and her sister were left to their own devices. You certainly have this in the case of somebody like Laurie Mattox, who had affairs with Jimmy Page, Mick Jagger, David Bowie, and so on in America. She was 14 when this all started. Yep. She says now, she's in her 60s today, and she says now, was I liberated? Did I have choices? Was I a role model for young girls? Or was I being abused? Because the way I look at it now from this point of view, I would not want this for anybody's daughter. But I just didn't know that it wasn't cool and fun at the time. So we change our minds as we age and mature, and we look back on certain episodes of our lives and think, I thought that was such and such at the time, but was it really? So I think you can't know at the time. And I think that I know that the age of consent exists not only to protect young females, which it mostly is, but of course sometimes boys, but to protect the young and the innocent from the elderly and predatory. And it also exists to protect these young people from themselves, because their urge might be to do such and such, whatever it is, to give themselves in that regard. But actually, they're too young to know how to do that. And so the law is in place to allow them to mature to a point at which they can make these choices.
I agree.
From a mature point of view.
In an immature mind, though, at the time, particularly if you were trying to fill a hole in the soul, as it were, to get swept up in that would be very, very easy, I would have thought.
Yeah, very attractive
and
as well.
You might have thought at the time you were getting what you needed, but but you weren't, from the point of view of a young person. So the responsibility, of course, falls on the older people. But you can't fill a void like that by doing things like that. You just can't. You cannot live your life vicariously to other people.
Neil.
You just can't. It doesn't work.
We know that, don't we? But they don't know it at the time.
But lads,
but how could they? They're too young. So where's the role model?
Exactly.
You've got to
Full
say.
circle.
You've got to say this, that the Mandy and Nicola and the mother's name is completely gone out of my head. Patsy. God, that was it. They were on a council estate, right? Mm-hmm. They were on a council estate. And if you put yourself into their mindset, here comes one of the world's most famous, wealthiest rock stars. And they go, wait a minute here. This is a pretty good route out of a council estate.
Mm-hmm. And that's what every other groupie has said in the past. And Mandy did say that when she and Nicola met Bill that night at the Daily Mirror Rock and Pop Awards at the Lyceum in the Strand, that they first of all thought, oh wow, he'd make a really nice boyfriend for our mum. That was the plan, to introduce Bill to their mother. Yeah. Now that worked out, didn't it?
It worked out very, very well. Right, Longy, I would like to save what's remaining of my voice. There's some fantastic comments here, so I'll pop them up on the screen if you would be so kind.
And I shall pop the glasses on and
thank God they're not the other ones.
We read them out for the
and
benefit of you listening.
And then we'll come back. Here we go. This is coming in from New York State, by the way, Lesley-Ann. I know you. Asa Don Brown is very high up over in the States in the psychotherapeutic community. Watches the show every time. So.
And we read these out for the benefit of those listening on Deluxe Radio because they haven't got video, they've just got audio. Asa Don Brown says, psychologically, dating an underage person goes to the heart and mind of the individual. It's not necessarily about the individual's age. Rather, it's about an opportunity or a personal desire or lust. Fair.
All right. This is a bit of a shocker. This is from Manhattan, by the way.
Did my group bit in India with movie stars there?
Yeah, too much information, Liz. Thanks. Jesus. Right. Now, this is a good one.
Paul Claridge, Jerry Lee Lewis, and then his 13-year-old wife, Myra. David Bowie, late teens, early 20s, with his then 14, 15-year-old girlfriend, Dana Gillespie. P.S. Dana, or it could be Dana.
It's Dana. Yeah, I know her very well.
Dana. Dana, who I've met many times and openly admits being underage, and she was with, in inverted commas,
She Bowie. Does, and Dana's... she's still performing to this day. She's a jazz artist, and she says that she was not abused by Bowie. There's a difference there because when they got together, she was going on 15, he was 17. So it's not as though he were an adult preying on a young person. He was a young person as well. It's a completely different thing.
Jimmy
Page,
no,
I agree.
Jimmy Page doesn't get the get out of jail card free, does he?
No,
Jimmy Page
definitely not. No. But he's walked free as well.
He did. Right, Neil.
But equally, I wouldn't like to see an average 17-year-old and a 15-year-old that got together that aren't famous have the law come down on them like a ton of bricks. I mean, I think it's education that's needed, and to me,
absolutely,
that is relative. That's a relatively innocent thing. I mean, when I was 17, I dated someone who was 16. For God's sake, I mean, if I'd have been 37, maybe, but that'd be a big difference.
But had you been 17 and your girlfriend had been 14, that would still be statutory rape.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Never got it.
I'm not arguing with you on the
It's just
law.
not the way I'm
That's
wired.
absolutely right.
I don't understand it. I mean, seriously, I just don't understand it at all. The way my head is wired, I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's morally superior. I just can't.
But what I would like to jump in and say quickly is that this book is not all about Bill Wyman's affair with Mandy Smith.
Of course not.
It's a very small part of the whole story. And we mustn't judge the whole band by this episode in Bill's life, because there was a whole lot more to the Rolling Stones, and there still is.
Liz says, I know a couple of guys that boasted about the number of women they slept with, thinking I'd be impressed, but I wasn't. This was 20 years ago. It just made me want to get into the shower by myself. And I will throw in that I haven't slept with anyone underage. I don't know if what I said earlier made it sound like I have, but I'm just going to throw that in.
Neither have I, and neither is Ross.
So I never did. Neil.
Sue Sleet says this relationship has been discussed many times in social work circles. As you say, it starts as statutory rape. The same can be said for Elvis Presley in his relationship. Elvis was hounded when he came to the UK because of this. It's another case of protection for the famous. That is, I think, the issue, isn't it? It's people hiding behind this veneer of fame and thinking they're untouchable. We've seen that an awful lot has come out over the years about that recently, hasn't it? Massively.
Definitely. I think if Elvis were alive today, that he would be being chased for this. But it would have had to be that Priscilla, her parents, would have taken a stand, literally taken a stand. And nobody ever did. No complaint was ever made. And again, he married her.
He married her, yeah. Let's get back to the Stones. What is it? I mean, I love the Stones. I actually think you and I disagree on this. I think they're sounding great now. I think they hit, for some reason, that last tour in the States, the name of which has just gone out of my head, that last tour in the
No
States.
Filter.
No Filter tour. I
Yeah.
thought they were on fire with that tour. I thought they sounded sensational. I mean,
Don't forget they got some very young musicians, not very young, but some younger, newer musicians with them.
Right,
So
and Chuck Leavell, who never gets... Chuck Leavell, who's been with them, 40 years? How long
Yeah.
has Chuck Leavell been? Forever.
As many. But they've also got Steve Jordan on drums in place of Charlie Watts. He was Charlie's personal choice, by the way.
Yes.
They've had Daryl Jones with them for a long time now, standing in for Bill Wyman as their bassist. And so there's a sharpness to their sound. There's a tightness to it. Yeah. There's a cohesion to it. You're absolutely right that hasn't really been there before.
I was a massive Charlie Watts fan. I was very, very upset when he died from cancer.
Of course. Yeah.
It was. I thought he was just fantastic. What I loved about his attitude, and I'm sure it's in the book, is that for him, it was a job. That was his job. He never saw himself as a rock star. He always saw himself as a musician. His real love was jazz, as you know. And it was, that's what he did for a living. And that's what kept him sane.
Also, he had the support of a very loving, devoted wife. Yeah. And they have one daughter, and they were a tight-knit threesome.
Yeah.
He didn't go out partying on the road. What he did was sketch every single one of his hotel rooms. And he left all those sketches. And of course, as a family, they were interested in breeding horses, dogs. They had a farm down in Devon. I don't know whether Shelley sold it after he died, but they had a life outside of rock and roll.
Do you know the thing
that is the secret.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because one would assume that they're all on the road and partying, and sometimes you look at it and it's just not like that. Throw this in briefly. I went to see a sort of a holistic practitioner type person once, and she told me she was working for a very famous metal band. I probably even shouldn't say it on air because they got a reputation to keep up. But you would think it was all sex and drugs and rock and roll. Well, it wasn't. It was more like herbal tea and supplements as recommended by this person. But to say that would totally destroy the reputation. So I won't say who they were, but trust me, you'd know them very well.
Okay.
It's what Charlie Watt. You have riders in contracts.
Yeah.
As you know, do you know what Charlie Watts' rider was?
Go on.
One wooden coat hanger.
So he'd hang his handmade suit on.
That was it. Isn't that adorable?
Charlie was the great Gatsby of the Rolling Stones. He came from nothing. He grew up in a prefab. I call him a prefab sprout in the book.
Yeah.
His father, who was a labourer, had a tailor. He used to go off to the East End to Brick Lane, and his father had his suits handmade by a tailor. Who knew? So people said, where did Charlie Watts' love of hand-tailored clothes come from, even though he came from nothing? It's because his dad had a tailor. This was the way one did things in the old days. Victorians had tailors. And so Charlie would sit there among these swatches of worsteds and tweeds and got literally a feel for fabrics. And his love developed from that. And so somebody who came from nothing had an obsession with clothes. He bought at auction some suits that had been worn by King George V, and they virtually fitted. He had them retailored very slightly, but he collected clothes. All his suits were pretty old, actually. He collected these things: shoes, belts, handkerchiefs, and all the accoutrements. He had a vast collection of tie pins, for example, and he kept all this stuff. It's that old family thing, isn't it? Never tell your kids what you like specifically, because every Christmas and birthday will come around, you're going to get a new tie pin.
Yeah, the number of Ferraris I've got parked outside is ridiculous.
Charlie the same, but interestingly, Charlie collected classic cars, but he could never drive. He never learned to drive. John Entwistle of The Who, he was the same.
Who was that?
Have you always been interested?
John Entwistle.
Oh,
have you
cool.
always been interested? So forgive me, it's the very first time I've met you. Obviously, I know your name, but in all these intricate details of the people that you write about, where's this interest come from of knowing the real ins and outs and the nitty gritty?
It's a journalistic thing. I was at a party at the weekend in Perugia, Italy, a 40th wedding anniversary party that was 2 years delayed because of the pandemic.
Of course.
And I happened to be seated next to a lady I'd never met before, a Maltese lady now living in Italy with her husband of 18 years. And the second thing she said to me after telling me her name was, "My husband's going to kill me." Oh, I said, "Oh." And she then proceeded to tell me the entire story. Each time he went off for a fag or a drink or a chat with somebody else, I'd get another installment. But it was in dribs and drabs. And then at the end of the party, she made me put her number in my phone so that she can tell me part 2 at some stage. And I said to her, "It's a really weird thing, this, and yes and no. Is it weird? Ever since I was a really young child, people have told me things, details about their lives, unsolicited. I'm absolutely sure that's the primary reason why I went into Fleet Street and became a journalist, because it was about finding out facts. And people would willingly divulge the nitty-gritty facts about their lives. So
people do that with me as well. I kind of get that. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it makes for fascinating books. I mean, what a wonderful thing.
Detail is everything. Facts and figures. I deal in facts and figures and measurements.
I wish the rest of the media did. I mean, you know, and I know that it used to be that they'd say, do a bit of research, and they'd do a little bit of research and write an article. Now they will make any crap up, no research, and just wait to be sued or not, as the case may be. That with just make it up, complete fiction.
Are we talking the broad media, or are we talking newspapers specifically?
We're talking newspapers.
Newspapers have lost their power because the internet happened, and so newspapers are no longer about news. They follow the news rather than break the news. We used to get the news through our letterbox each morning. We didn't have a telly that we could put on. There wasn't round-the-clock 24/7 news, rolling news as we call it. You get a news bulletin on the radio, but only at certain times. So we relied on the newspapers to tell us what was going on. That has now changed. And we get our news primarily from the internet, television, and radio. So the power of newspapers, the impact of newspapers has diminished. And so really we're getting a newsprint version of Hello magazine when we read a paper. The paper is a sort of adjunct to the main broadcast.
It's not news, is it? It's opinion.
No, it's not news.
It's opinion, which is why
has the integrity of the media improved since it's all gone online?
No,
we can't tar everybody with the same brush. I will say that, because there are journalists of worth out there. I write very occasionally for papers now. Yeah, I don't write much for newspapers now because I'm an author. But when I have a book due out, newspapers will ask me to write a feature or an opinion piece, an op-ed as they call it, or a column or something. And that will be very much full of my content. What they want from me is what I think about something. And you are right. Most of the content of newspapers now is opinion. Doesn't make it wrong or right, but it's an opinion.
See, that's why I don't watch the news, because my view is, look, I'm over 21. I've been around the block a few times. It's not my first rodeo. Don't tell me what I should be thinking. Tell me the facts, and I'm grown up enough. I'll interpret it the way that I want to interpret it. Don't sit there getting because you got some pundit on speed dial to tell me what the news means. I'll work it out.
But I know people that literally believe everything they read in the tabloids.
Of course they do.
My mother does. My mother takes the Daily Mail every day. She moans like hell about it, but she believes, and she'll say, "Oh, such and such." I said, "Where do you hear that, Mum?" "Oh, it said it in the Daily Mail." I say, "Mum, we've talked about the Daily Mail. You can't believe everything you read there," but she does.
Oh, my parents studied it avidly every day, and then they would sit there and watch the news, all the bad news of the day, with more bad news scrolling across the bottom of the screen.
Of course it is.
And then I slowly watched all the joy suck out of their life. I mean,
well, isn't it just? Isn't it just? Look at this. This is coming in from Manhattan.
It's a bit of a waste of time.
All our mums believe the Daily Mail, right?
No, here's the weird thing. Growing up, my parents, don't ask me why, they got the Daily Mirror. And it wasn't until I was way, way older that I realized the Daily Mirror was a Labour supporter and all their news was. But they always got the Daily Mirror. Never got
It was
the
a
Mail.
fine organ in those days. Not
Cassandra,
least because
there was a wonderful
what a
columnist.
columnist. My father was the chief sports writer of the Daily Mirror in
The
those
voice
days.
of sport.
The voice of sport. Yeah,
Lesley-Ann
but it was a venerable organ back then.
Yes.
You know, incomparable to the Daily Mirror we know today.
Now,
can I ask you one question?
Sorry.
Yes.
Go on, Neil.
You must have been asked this 1,000 times, but I know several people that are aspiring authors. How long does it take you to write a book that you're really satisfied with? Because I'm sure we're pretty hard on ourselves, and there's several iterations of it. How long did that masterpiece take you from conception to creation?
Okay, every book is different. It's not a question of how long it takes to write a book. It's a question of how long it takes to research a book, to gather all the information and to gather new information, to follow the lead. How long
does it take to research a book and gather all the new information?
About a year. Okay. My friend Philip Norman, who is a famous author, also of rock star biographies, he writes bricks. You know, his books are 1,000 pages, and he will take 2 years, but he employs a team of researchers. I do all the research myself. Right. So it's slightly different. This book's about 400 pages, I suppose. Yeah. That took me about a year to find out stuff, to find people to interview, to find sources of information that hadn't been published before. That is the point. You can't just regurgitate what other people have written.
Because it's so boring.
Reliable sources as well.
And also, so many books, I think you may not agree, of course, it's a bit pejorative of me, but so many books are cut and paste. They sort of
they go
onto Wikipedia, cut and paste it, here's my book. No, that's crap. What you've done is cut and pasted somebody else's book. You've
got to go to the source, and it frequently is the case that you'll go and find somebody to interview. Somebody like Keith Altham, who was a music writer, famously a music writer, who became the Stones' PR, their publicist, for many years. And he'll have been quoted in some previous book as having said such and such and so and so. And you go and find Keith, persuade him to talk. I don't do these interviews anymore. I've given that all up. You know, oh, please, Keith. We've been friends a long time, you know. And he'll say something that contradicts what he's been quoted in a previous book as having said. Is it that Keith Altham, whoever it is we're talking to, has changed their mind about their opinion of what happened at that particular time? Or was it misquoted in the first place? People are very diplomatic and they won't always say. But with this book, for example, I obviously didn't attend the funeral of Brian Jones, which was a really significant occasion. So I made myself the task of finding somebody who had attended that funeral. And I did find Stuart White, who was a young reporter for the News of the World at the time. And he covered that funeral. It was his first big job for the newspaper, was going down to Brian Jones's hometown and covering that funeral firsthand. And it's an eyewitness account that you can never argue with. And that is what I'm always trying to find. Somebody who was there, somebody who knew.
How did you track him down? Okay, fine. All right, Sherlock, don't tell me. I want to get on to something else.
It's about who we know, isn't it? It's about who we know and not
always. There's something I want to get on to. You've written about Freddie Mercury. We're both huge Freddie fans. It's not about your book, so forgive me, but I could not resist the opportunity while we've got you on the show. I watched the first 20 minutes of the Jubilee concert celebration thing. And after 20 minutes, I gave up and watched some movies. It wasn't for me. And I vote with my feet. There's no point in moaning and bitching about it. Who cares? Who cares about my opinion?
There's an off button for a reason, right?
There's an off button. You got a choice. There's about 500 channels. Don't moan about it. Just change channels. Shut up, right? So Queen opened up. And all I wrote was, I've always been a big fan of Adam, have been since American Idol, but boy, this really made me miss Freddie.
I saw it. I saw what you wrote.
I wrote that, and everybody went like. And I thought, and what do you think? Do you think there is a time, and this comes kind of back to Stones, but do you think there is a time when it's like, you know what, guys, enough's enough now. Let's call it a day.
Everybody has their opinion about John Deacon, the Queen bass player, having quit the band when Freddie died. There was a very good reason for that, which isn't often aired. John lost his father when he was 11, and he never grieved. He climbed up. He was very close to Freddie. Freddie was older. He was a father figure to John. When Freddie died in 1991, John was very uncomfortable about taking the band on. He said, without Freddie, there is no Queen. The same as Led Zeppelin said after John Bonham died. Without John, there's no Led Zeppelin. We call it a day. And so John, it took a while. I think he finally stepped back in about 1997. And Brian was adamant that they should take Queen forward and that they should get another singer. And you'll remember that they went out with Paul Rodgers.
With Paul Rodgers, but he was, to my view, can I discuss? I'd love to bounce this off you quickly. Damn, I wish we had more time. I love Paul Rodgers. You got him from Free, you got him from Bad Company, fabulous rock voice. Too butch for Queen.
Yeah.
Too butch.
The whole essence of Queen is the campness.
Yeah.
And that camp personality, which is what drives the band, you know, and also Freddie's demeanor, his image, his dance contradicted the machismo of the rest of the band. With Adam, you still have that to a certain extent. We know about Adam. The point is he's American, and it doesn't work primarily for that reason. He's a competent singer. He's American. It can't possibly work. Queen is English. It's British. And that is the essence of it. And that's not to take away from his talent. But
Adam's
of course,
can I make it clear? Because I think people took umbrage with me. Let me make it very clear. I used to watch American Idol. I've given up on that, but I used to watch it. I wanted Adam Lambert to win. I was blown away by this guy's talent, his range, his control, all of those technical things. I thought he was excellent. But I'm with Lesley-Ann on this. By the way, you mentioned John Deacon, who wrote so much of Queen's stuff, which everyone forgets. He wrote some of the biggest, most memorable hits. And for reasons that are completely lost in the mists of time and alcohol, he and I ended up having dinner a few times. God knows why. I can't even remember why or where we were. And he was the most charming. And again, so quietly spoken, not the big rock star. He just sat there. And at one point he said to me, Russ, and I went, what's up? He said, where are we? I said, we're in London. He said, we've been on tour. I just can't remember.
And that's it. Every day fades into the next. Yeah,
every town's a limo and a hotel.
I've written 4 books about Freddie, actually. And the last one that came out last September, which I should have. It's called Love of My Life. I thought I had a copy nearby, but it's gone missing. Love of My Life, and it's about the life and loves of Freddie. Yeah. And I was contacted out of the blue by a person, I won't say who it was, who said to me, thank goodness somebody has written the truth about this band and how they have exploited Freddie's legacy. Because everything in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie is not who Freddie was. And this is a very important person who I am going to write about, and this story will come out. But the Freddie who was portrayed in that film, which was a tragedy, a tragic figure, a gay man in love with a woman. So Freddie, gay, interesting lifestyle, but in love with Mary Austin. And what an awful sad story that is, because they can never be together. There is more to it. There is way more to it. And I feel vindicated because how I portrayed it in my book has turned out to be true from a most unlikely source.
And you, because we were speaking about it, and Longer, you wouldn't know this. Here's the weird thing. So Lesley-Ann, who researches meticulously, as you've probably everybody watching around the world has gathered, right? She was castigated. How dare you do this? As though she'd said something about Christ or something like that. It was ridiculous.
They went there, they did.
It was vindictive, it was vitriolic, it was vile.
But they're about to find out the true story. And not even I could have imagined how this would pan out.
Wow.
So watch this space is all I can say, because it's really thrilling. We shall. It's really thrilling to be able to bring the real Freddie from a watertight source back to the world. Wowza. And to say to Brian, and to a lesser extent Roger, because Roger's just gone along with it mostly. Like, Roger was a very loyal friend to Freddie. I'm not saying Brian wasn't, but Brian has had a different agenda. But you wait.
Am I allowed to say this? Because I think you went public.
Depends what you're going to
say. if I stray into an area you don't want to talk about,
okay,
immediately stop me. Brian May said, "I've never met this woman," and you responded,
yeah,
"Well, did he not say that?"
He did say that. He said it on his blog. I've never met this person. This person never met Freddie.
And then how did you respond? Here's a picture of us together. What's the matter with you?
I know. And it was their idea that I went on the first tour they invited me on in the first place, because I'd written a positive review of a show I'd seen at Wembley, and not very many journalists liked Queen back in those days.
No,
when our music press was,
like them.
Yeah, and I tell you why, because the music papers couldn't categorize them. They didn't know where to put them. Is it rock? Is it pop? Is it what's the genre? Don't know, therefore can't really write about them. But I said positive things in my Daily Mail column, and so they invited me on tour. So it's not as if I went along for the ride. But yeah, I mean,
But they'd never met you.
Look, he must have forgotten, is all I can say.
You're a much more polite and well, you always have been since the age of much nicer person than I could aspire to be.
Wow.
But Neil, you see, and everybody else who's watching and listening, and I will say hello to everybody at Deluxe Radio, all 70,000 of you who they take this stream and they take the show, which is very nice. And thanks to David Wimble once again. Do you see how people are so easily led to believe, and like Lesley-Ann's painted as, a parvenu. No, that's not the case at all. But it's so difficult to persuade. Once they've made up their mind with some nonsense in the media, it must be true. No, it's not true.
Some people hold the media in very high authority for some reason. As a bastion of truth, which is a bit questionable at the best of times.
Well, haven't we always said, RK, there are three versions of the truth. Yeah. There's his, and there's hers, and then there's the truth.
The number of times that we've said that over the years, it is absolutely true. Somewhere in the middle, But you know what I don't like, and this is a Meghan thing, and somebody else said it. Well, that's my truth. And
I hate that expression. That's so American. I'm not anti-American, but that is. It's a very Oprah thing to say. My truth. Tell your truth. Hold on to your truth. What? I mean,
what does that mean?
It's not the truth then in that case, is it? Because it's not what happened. It's a perception of what happened.
Precisely. It's interesting. There's only one response to that, which Oprah, of course, should have done had she not been halfway up to their bottoms. It was a disgusting interview. I'm sorry. What? Spare me that crap. So the only response is, okay, that is your truth. Here's my version of the truth. And that's how you respond. You can't have your truth. There is only the truth. Yeah. That's what there is.
It implies a blinkeredness, doesn't it? That I want this bit to be true. I want only to know about this bit. But everything that happened outside of here, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't count. Didn't happen.
Well, Rosemary Jessup will get this, being a horsey lady with her lovely horses. It's blinkered, isn't it? It makes me think of my late dad. Blinkers that got them out of money.
People will do that all the time, though. We've got this thing in our brains called the reticular activating system, and we will look for things that confirm our beliefs. It's a bit like buying a new car and then seeing it on the roads everywhere. They were always there before, but you just didn't notice.
What's it called again? What's it called again?
Reticular
activating system.
I love that.
Or your RAS for short.
Your RAS. He's up his own RAS, as it were.
Quick congratulations. We love positive things. Luke Newman, many congratulations. You're working with Mine now, community connector. This is absolutely fabulous. Luke has been on the show. He's a terrific apostle for mental health. Well done to you. I won't read the whole thing now because
that is brilliant, Luke. Congratulations.
Well done.
Congratulations.
We're trying to get you to pop onto one of the shows and have a chit chat about it.
Yeah, I'd love that.
That would be very cool. Lesley-Ann, tell us where we can buy the book. Plug the backside out of it. Go.
Here we go. The Stone Age, 60 Years of the Rolling Stones. Comes out tomorrow, 9th of June, and you'll find it wherever books are sold. Amazon's a good place to start.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Many
and I look forward to the future revelations. I'm intrigued now.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine more? You do court controversy. You can't help it. It's like you're a controversy magnet.
No, I'm as long as I'm not a controversy.
Well, you're a truth magnet. And
controversy. Yeah, I think I'll say that. People don't want too much truth in their lives these days. But
They can't
yeah,
take it. They can't
truth is
take
the
it.
bottom line. It
They're
really
too
is.
fragile. They're just too fragile. Very, very quick question, randomly, as we wind up. You mentioned Amazon. I get everything. I live on Amazon. I'm surprised that Bezos doesn't personally deliver to my front door. I bought so much from them.
Bloody well should,
But
yeah.
especially with all this and everything, and the COVID. Do you think we're going to lose bookshops?
No, I don't.
Good.
No, I don't. I don't think we'll lose physical books either.
No,
because
neither do
there is too much screen time in everybody's lives. I was given a Kindle a few years ago by my kids. I couldn't really make it work for me because I spend all day looking at a screen. I've got one of these in my hand all the time. You know, everything is screen. I want to hold a book in my hands and read words on a piece of paper. Yeah.
This sounds so stupid. I had a blazing argument with someone years ago who told me that, I mean, I'm going back like 10, 15 years. Screens don't smell like a new book.
They don't smell like an old book either. You know, when you go into an old library, the smell of sort of slightly musty books.
Lesley-Ann Jones, we are
kind of
completely
magical,
out of time.
and there's so much history contained there. You can almost
Neil
feel
Long,
it as you walk
King
past
of
the
New Malden, bless you. Lesley-Ann Jones, good luck with the book. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
We'll be back on Friday. Until then, try and stay out of trouble for 5 minutes, will you? Thank you.
Good afternoon.